You're listening to Culture 360, the podcast that takes you inside the world of workplace and team culture. I'm Stu Savage, your host and guide, as we explore the ideas, people, and stories shaping the way we work, lead, and connect. So please subscribe, sit back, relax, and enjoy culture from every angle. And welcome to the Culture 360 podcast, Culture from Every Angle, in association with the Culture Room. Welcome to episode 7 of Culture 360. Here we are in sunny Wellington. It's not Armageddon today, you'll be pleased to know. It's not sideways wind. But I'll tell you where it is sunny. It's Hawke's Bay, where our next guest for episode 7 lives, Irene van Dyk. Welcome to the Culture 360 podcast. Irene, how are you?
Thank you, Stu. I'm absolutely fantastic. I tell you what, like you say, it's balmy in Hawke's Bay. Absolutely loving this summer.
Well, if the sun's shining in Wellington, it's going to be, stinking hot in Hawke's Bay over on the East Coast. And another thing I'm going to throw in before we get rolling is the accolade that I'm going to bestow upon you. You're the first female on the podcast. So you can add that to the impressive list of achievements. I'm sure you'll put it on your Wikipedia page. So congratulations on that. I think firstly, Irene, for people that either aren't familiar with New Zealand sport, the Silver Ferns or netball that might be listening to this for some gold nuggets of advice around leadership and culture, could you just give a very brief introduction to yourself and your background?
Of course I can. I was born in South Africa and lived in South Africa until the year 2000. Immigrated to New Zealand in the year 2000. Backtrack a little, I started playing netball when I was 9. And I went to a little farm school, so I was more so into track and field and playing cricket. Mind you, every sport really that was available, and absolutely loved every minute of sport. Like, we would literally play outside until our parents were yelling at us, dinner time, or, when it started getting dark, you knew it was time to go in. And, yeah, absolutely loved that. Had the opportunity in 1994 to represent South Africa, and that was the first time South Africa was allowed in the international arena when Nelson Mandela became president, and played 72 tests for South Africa. Immigrated to New Zealand in the year 2000 and made myself available to play for the Silver Ferns. Was selected in the 2000 team and represented New Zealand until 2013. When we immigrated to New Zealand, I was a full-time teacher and I taught until 2010. I have a daughter, Bianca, and my husband, Christy, who is happily, I think, in New Zealand, living in New Zealand.
Double check on that.
Yes, and currently started, obviously, after finishing netball, not knowing where I'm going and what I'm doing, started at Netball Central Zone as the Junior Netball Development Officer and are working currently at Netball New Zealand. Honestly, living the dream, because netball is definitely in my blood. And I love my job. I love being able to make people see the wonders of netball and how much it meant to me. And I want it to mean as much to other people as it means to me.
Well, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right? And it sounds like you are living the dream.
Absolutely.
I want to go back initially to South Africa and just to dig into your family. So you live with your parents and your siblings, but what were the key influences and drivers for you for sport, but also getting involved in netball and obviously moving on to get 72 caps for South Africa? And I guess the little piece that you missed out there, finishing runners-up in the 95 World Cup in England's second city in Birmingham. So who were the key influences at home for you?
I think growing up in South Africa, sport is a way of life. Like we grew up in the era where there weren't actually TVs, so you just played whatever was out there. saying there was no TVs. I think we had our first TV in 1989. So your idols or the people that influenced you were your close relations. So that was mum and dad, obviously. And then my siblings, they played all sports under the sun. My sister was a netballer. And I loved watching her because she was just amazing. I thought she was the best player in the world. The funny thing is, she was shooting goals, and she made me. She actually asked me to be her rebounder because she made me believe that rebounding a ball is the most important job in the world. And I felt so special because I spent all this time rebounding for my sister. And I only realized in my later life that she was using me. That was like cheap labor. She just didn't want to chase the ball. So she would shoot the goal and I would have to pass it back to her. So yes, people influenced me was definitely my sister. Then obviously, your parents, because they travel everywhere with you. They make things happen and they support you, and they are your biggest cheerleaders. So yes, those were definitely the biggest influences in my life. And I think too, growing up, going through secondary school and then studying teaching, it wasn't until I started studying that I realized these sport can take you everywhere in South Africa, because at that point in time it was like nationals and you get to go and play in other regions and travel around, that it actually became real. And obviously in 1995, like you say, being selected for the South African team and having the opportunity to go overseas and play against other countries, that was just unbelievable. And we did travel to England first and played 5 tests in England, and we pretty much beat everyone when we played in England, but then we kind of came via Aussie and New Zealand back to South Africa, and I think we got beaten by Australia by about 30 goals, and then we came to New Zealand and got smashed by 48 goals, and then we realized, whoa, hold on, netball is not that easy. And Joyce Brown from Australia and Yvonne Willering from New Zealand, I think, felt really sorry for us South Africans and decided that they will come over to South Africa and help Marlene Wagner to get us ready for the 95 World Cup. And wow, it was just unbelievable, the preparation we did going into the World Cup in Birmingham with Joyce and Yvonne's help, and Marlene Wagner, who obviously was open enough to go, I need, all the help we can get. And that just prepared us so well, because we played round robin game against New Zealand, who we thought, as the South African team, we actually thought that they were the best at that tournament. They had Sandra Edge as their center, and I can distinctly remember watching video footage of Sandy around the circle edge, how she swings the ball and literally turned the defenders inside out. And we were like, how does she even do it? It was just phenomenal. And yeah, so we did all our homework, and yes, playing in the round robin and beat the Silver Ferns, and we kind of celebrated as if we won the World Cup, because it was, in our eyes, the Ferns were definitely the best team at that tournament, and we just played a blinder against them and won and played the final against Australia and got smashed by, I think, 14 goals. So, yeah, it was quite a special day for us South Africans. And it was quite awesome too, because when we got back to South Africa, there were people everywhere. For the first time, it looked like it went far and wide that we came second. We won the silver medal. And when we went back to South Africa, there were just people everywhere on the airport wishing us, just congratulating us and just celebrated with us getting the silver medal. And it was quite cool because we got invited to dinner with Nelson Mandela, which was very,
Mm.
very special. So we met the big guy, and I can tell you, he was probably 6'2", 6'3". He was very tall, and his mana when he came into the room was, you know, what they say and how you feel in his presence is just incredible. He really valued people, and I think that's why, people understood what he stood for and how incredible he was at leading South Africa into that era. It was just, still I have to pinch myself thinking that I was, sitting around a round table with him and shaking his hand. And yeah, it was pretty special.
Bucket list stuff, right?
100%. Yeah.
The reason I asked that question, to go back to the start, just around your key influences, and you took us on a real good journey there around South Africa and playing netball right up to the point where you come to New Zealand. But looking at people's key influences, because your experiences generally create your beliefs and your values as a person. And obviously, admission out the gate that we worked together for a few years at Netball Central Zone and getting to know you. I think one time I had you captive in a car going up to Dannyvirk for 3 hours one way, so 6 hour round trip, which was a real education for me to get to interview you in the car and get to know you more and build that relationship. But you obviously got a lot of work ethic, quite extroverted, you're a real effervescent, bubbly person, engaging. There's a lot of those influences come through in your leadership and your playing and your coaching. Is that a fair comment, that those come from your parents and your upbringing?
Absolutely. I think it also comes with confidence, Stu. When we immigrated to New Zealand, and even my earlier years, I think when you take people on a journey, and if you are open and honest and you value people, you see people and you say hi to them in the morning, regardless if you know them or not. That is possibly the first introduction of yourself. It's your personality that you bestow on other people. And I think, to me, it is just who I am very much a person that gives. I love giving part of myself, part of my experience, part of who I am to other people. And yeah, I feel I am an open book, to be quite honest.
I mean, that's one of the questions we had in preparation for this, is just to describe your own journey in netball and in terms of culture and how you would sum it up. So do you feel that those things you've described, you've carried with you through your playing, coaching, commentating career and influenced people, like you say?
Yeah, I feel it happened here in New Zealand, because we were in the people's lounges week in and week out. So you people kind of got to know you, and you walk outside and people say hi to you because you are a netballer. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for netball, and if it weren't for the fact that we were in people's lounges week in and week out. And I feel like the only way I can repay New Zealand is to be approachable and to be the bubbly person I am. And I think this is my way of repaying people, because if people tell the little ones, oh, that is Irene van Dyk, the kids would be like, who? Huh? What? So the parents get more excited about seeing me than what the kids do. But yeah, it is, you want to leave a legacy. You want to make kids realize that, you know, top sports people are nice, and they've worked hard, but they also, they want to be role models for younger people.
So there's that humble element too, isn't there, really? In terms of, I've
Yes.
seen, obviously being with you, like, we're at a cafe and a mum or a dad comes over with a child, and it's the mum or dad asking for an autograph, not the child. And the mum and dad are explaining who you are.
Exactly.
So you can read into that what you want. But yeah, it is funny to see it play out in real time.
Yeah.
So you came to Came to New Zealand in 2000, so you had an opportunity, a phone call came through, and you ended up playing for the Capital Shakers, which are obviously now the Central Pulse, for 2 seasons. What did you notice? What were the differences between sporting cultures? You came from South Africa to New Zealand, and did you notice any key differences, certainly around netball and culture and leadership?
Yeah, coming to New Zealand, one of the first things I noticed was how embedded sport was in the community life here. Not just as an elite performance, but as something that connects people across ages and backgrounds. I feel um, netball is lived in New Zealand, and I feel everyone, right? Someone said to me the other day, it's from the womb to the tomb. Like
That's good,
kids
sorry.
grow, kids get brought up next to the netball court and they play, and there's so many avenues in netball that you can go, a player, administrator, umpire, coach. There's so many avenues that you can go. And yeah, I feel it's a way of living. Whereas in South Africa, it was all as big, but it wasn't necessarily televised. So you play it because it was there, and your teachers and your parents and your siblings play it. That's why you are there as well. So I feel in New Zealand it is definitely a way of, and it is, yeah, it's just, and being the biggest participant sport, really, it is, or the female sport, it is definitely a means of living in New Zealand.
I think the thing that struck me coming to New Zealand is the not just the sport being the forefront of everyone's mind, but also the opportunities the kids have. When I went to school, it was probably one of about 10 sports. Now you can play one of 100 sports at school and activities. So it's probably a bit of a challenge for netball being the leading female sport at the moment, is that there is more opportunity out there. So obviously that's over to the likes of yourself, Irene, in your current role, increasing participation. So
Yeah,
with
absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's why it is really important too to get it right. Like modified sport is really important, and all sports are modifying the game. So, like having our future ferns as a product, but then also, what does twilight netball look like, and shorter seasons? Does uniforms matter? Can people just play in what they're comfortable with as long as they all have the same bibs? You know, having walking netball for our older generation, and then obviously our boys and male netball is on the up as well. So it is having those opportunities and
Mhm.
different formats and different times of the year of what social netball looks like. Yeah.
a diverse range of offerings across not just netball, but many sports now. Mm.
Yes. Gosh, yes, it
Just to
is.
jump into your playing career, really, and how it influenced leadership and culture. So obviously you came to New Zealand in 2000. You end up with 145 caps for the Silver Ferns, 217 caps overall, if you include the South African ones. You went from the Shakers after 2 seasons and end up at the Waikato Bay Plenty Magic, and you're there for 10 years. And I think probably one of the pinnacles of your career at the Magic was the Trans Tasman win in 2012. Really, what I wanted to dig into, really, and tease out of you was what was different about that 2012 season in terms of culture and leadership and the experience and the environment that you experienced.
Yeah, gosh, that was a magical year, that 2012. At that point in time, culture wasn't something that we explicitly talked about. It was, we were there to do a job, we were there to perform, and we were there to win. The expectations were clear, but I don't think we actually talked about it. We knew we wanted to win, and we knew we had to work hard for it. Looking back now, with the benefit of hindsight,
Mhm.
I can see how strong and intentional our culture actually was. I can remember we lost the first four games. Wow. And we were sitting in a room discussing our game. Like after a game, you dump stuff. You have a review, you dump what you've done and you move forward. And I can distinctly remember sitting in that room and we looked at Dame Nolene and we were like, what is wrong? Like, we play good netball. Why are we still losing? And Dame Knowles is like, hey, look, trust the process. We are playing better and better every week. We are on the brink of doing something flippin' spectacular. So just trust the process. And it was, wow. The fifth game we played, actually, it was that invisible thread that kind of, it actually just clicked. And we were just so connected. And it just shows you, like, she didn't enforce a culture. That culture started, I think it took about 3 years for us to build that culture. It's about the heart. It's about your magic. It is about that invisible link that we had. We showed vulnerability, but we knew it was a safe space and that whatever we showed, it wasn't as a weakness. It was something that is going to carry us forward, and it was something that was going to catapult us into the next era. Wowzers. I can remember too, we had trainings where we had to get stuff, like we set the standard. Knowles would come to us and go, how many does the attackers want to get? And we go 6 out of 8. And then she'll ask the defenders, how many do you want to get? And they were like 6 out of 8. So somewhere along the line, there's going to be a loser, isn't there? And we would carry on until we hit those marks, man. And we really, it was tough. It was hard. It was hard yakka. But we knew that if we didn't push one another, then no one else was going to push us. It was a very, very much intrinsic. And we knew also if we push one another to the limit, then the opposition is not going to push us as much as we push one another. So we knew that if we dug deep and we put in the hard yards, then we will be successful. And I think that is that what Dame Knowles instilled in us was, if you give me a handy, then we will get there. We will get there.
And do you think that was with Noel? Do you think it's a top-down approach and she was quite shrewd in sort of manufacturing that environment? Or do you think it was driven by key people in the dressing room, key players within the team? Is it top-down or bottom-up?
No, I think it is. I think it's hand in hand. I think Knowles is a great leader, and I think she let us have that, because it's the hard conversations. It's things people don't see. It's giving us, the players, the power to create something. I definitely think it was a hand in hand kind of relationship. She led us, but she also created that environment where we could flourish and we could push one another. And she obviously encouraged us to go harder and tougher and be courageous. But I do think it's not a top down and it's not a bottom up. I think it is definitely a hand in hand thing. And you know what? It was also the fact that netball is bigger than all of us, and it is not about individuals. It is about creating that team environment that is unbreakable and unshakable, even when things come from the outside and outside external pressures and challenges. That man, we are so strong, and we know what our values are, what we believe in. We know how hard we've trained, that no one's done what we've done before. And I think that gives you confidence, and that is what actually sets the culture.
So was this never ever spoken about at training or in team meetings? It was something that was developed organically, or did Knowles have It was?
Yeah. It was never talked about explicitly. It was something that grew. It was something that was created, but it was also not instant. It wasn't just a one-day job and we were like, wow, this is cool. It comes through adversity. It comes through challenges. It comes through successes. It comes through things that you recognize. It comes through things the ability that you have to talk about it and having the honest conversations. And it's not always easy conversations, but you know what? It is celebrating the small things and it's also recognizing the things that you can improve on.
Was there an environment where people could speak up, or you could have a direct conversation with one of your colleagues, one of the other players, and how was that created, that safe space so you can have a conversation? Because I think we've all been in the workplace or in teams, sports teams, and it can be construed in a different way sometimes. Like, so how did you create that space where, because you need to have those hard conversations, right, in high performance sport, and you need to be accountable because obviously you want to win on the weekend when you play the games. Was that
Yeah.
ever spoken about, like creating that environment where you
I
could speak up?
oh, I think with sport it is quite unique and it is quite good that what happens on court stays on court. And
Mm.
then we were lucky enough that we were a team that actually liked one another off court and on court. But, I can remember too, Laura Langman. God, man, we had some Barneys on that court because I'm like, just give me the ball. And she's like, you're not available. And I'm like, I'm right here. And she's like, but the defender is right there too. I can see the defender, Irene. You can't. I'm like, but then put me in a space, like these certain things that, yeah, I think I think the honest conversations on court, and Knowles just let it happen. Like she literally just let it happen. And I can remember too, like Liana and Casey and how they discuss things and how they talk to one another on court. It was hard and it was tough, but you don't have time to tiddlywinks. You don't have time to actually put it in a nice way. You literally just have to say it as it is. And then when you warm down, you can kind of nut it out. But there's certain things that has to be done and changed on the spot for you to learn one another's movements and patterns and things. And I think that was the beauty of our team, that kind of environment was created, and it wasn't there was no maliciousness around it. We just wanted to be the best version of ourselves. Knowles wanted it to be the best version of us, because if we showed strength on court and that we can have that conversation on court, then it will follow on off court, and that is the perfect environment, because you really want to be the best version of yourself and you want to be the best version for your team.
Yeah, I think just to put this into perspective for people that don't follow netball or haven't in the past, that you guys winning that championship in 2012, you were the only New Zealand franchise to have done that, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And you beat
It
the
was a
Vixens in the
Trans
final.
Tasman competition.
Yeah, and you beat the Vixens in the final, and I think you may have beat Adelaide as well on the way through the playoffs, and the Mystics,
Yes.
who are
And the
the
Mystics,
Auckland-based
yeah.
franchise. Yeah. So to put that in perspective, it was a big deal, and there was a lot of pressure that came with that. And obviously, you get scrutinized being high-performance athletes in the media. Do you think, obviously, that pressure can create friction on the inner sanctum? And how do you handle that pressure as a professional athlete if you are being scrutinized in the media as a team or as an individual?
The media is a powerful influence, man. Whether it's organizational, it's the media have a lot to answer for. Especially when you are in the public eye constantly, behaviors can shift. And especially, mind you, I'm glad we are played in those days and not in these days where social media, that's a whole different can of worms. But how people perceive what is happening in a team and what is actually happening behind closed doors is completely different. I can remember 2012, because we lost the first 4 games, for Magic. We were, on paper, we were the team that was supposed to cause carnage. Oh, yes, we did for the first 4 games for all the wrong reasons. And I can remember there was a reporter that came out after the 4th loss. And, Knowles tried to just lift the spirits. And she came to our training in a bumblebee outfit. And we thought it was freaking hilarious. She lost a bet or something. And this reporter literally ripped into Knowles about we've lost 4 games in a row, yet she comes to a training in a bumblebee outfit. So she questioned Knowles's commitment and Knowles's competitiveness in this environment. And I'll tell you what, that person, I don't think any of our netballers that played for the 2012 Magic team has ever spoken to that person. And yeah, I don't think any of us will in the near future either. Because you know what? It becomes, when you have a strong culture and it goes way deeper than just the game. Those are your sisters. You attack our coach, you attack our team. And we just stood by Knowles and we were like, no, this is unacceptable. You attack one of us, you attack all of us. So, and it shows because I don't think any of us has still spoken to that person in the media after that.
I think that's quite pivotal, isn't it? With some cultures that you see that are really strong, like the one you had there, is they're so hard to break into. They're impenetrable. And like you said, it's basically one for all for one. So the coach, the players, and the backroom staff, you're all part of one system. And
absolutely, yeah.
For people like me digging into the insights, it can be reasonably difficult sometimes to break into those cultures because they are so strong to try and understand what's going on the inside. So, I mean, you've just basically demonstrated that there, haven't you? That you had a really strong culture and that probably sat underneath that 2012 win.
Yeah, definitely. The thing is too, it is, sometimes it takes controversy or hard times for a team to actually gel and build together. Because as soon as you start to struggle together and, you face challenges together, that actually makes you a much stronger and connected team because it's that vulnerability that you show. And it is okay to show it because it doesn't go anywhere. But your teammates have your back. It's that trust. It's that trust as well, man. It's like you're not going to throw your sister under the bus because you trust one another. You trust one another with more than just the game. It becomes something of who you are and what you believe in and what your values are.
That's good stuff. Thank you for that, Irene. I want to wind back 9 years to 2003, another pivotal year for you. And some of the reading I've done for this podcast out to co-author Andy Martin, who wrote The Will to Win with Lana McCarthy and Jeff Watson. Some really good insights in that book. I read about Ruth Aitken and Lee Gibbs coaching the 2003 World Champs winning team, which you were part of. And then you went on to have more success really in the Commonwealth 2006 and 2010. Something that really interested me was Lee Gibb talked about the passion keti. And that's a Māori word for basket or bag, isn't it? Like a toolbox.
Yeah.
And I think in the pure documentary, you talked about that 2003 team, like a culture of winning. But underneath that was this interesting aspect of the passion keti, of how on tour I think you were in Jamaica, you would bring something out of your keti and talk about it, and somebody would be selected each day to talk about what was in the keti, in the bag, and why it was personal to them and what it meant, and that emotional connection and how it connected to the team. Do you remember this going on? Is the first question. And secondly, do you remember any of the items, maybe something that you had in your keti?
Yes, that kitty was very, very important. So in your kitty, what I had in my kitty was a photo of my family, so my siblings and my parents. And I had a photo of Bianca and Christy, and I had a chocolate bar, and it's So what you shared during the day, so remember we were away from home for quite some time, so emotions for women being away from home is quite high. And as soon as someone starts to talk about the personal experiences and the journey and how they ended up where they are and the losses along the way and those kind of things, you turn into tears. And I can remember you spoke about your journey. So my parents obviously both passed away. So the losses through that, and that kind of turns the emotion on. And then um, Bianca and Christy being my cheerleaders and my support people and the ones that believe in me and the ones that I left behind. Those were that kind of support system as well. I had chocolate in there because I had to sacrifice chocolate because we were all standing in a circle, and I can remember Dr. Jude. She was our doctor for the trip. She passed a bag of potatoes around, and we had to move it from one person to the other. And we passed it around, and we giggled, and we were like, "Doc, what is this bag of potatoes for?" And she was like, "That's how much your team's overweight." And we were like, "What?" So we all decided, okay, we're going to sacrifice. So instead of having a big block of chocolates, your sacrifice or my sacrifice was I'll have, a smaller size chocolate. So I had to remind myself that is what I'm sacrificing for this team. But it is also, yeah, it is kind of, the kitty was where you started and what makes it special for you to be in that position at that point in time. So we also had CD that we cut out with everyone's favorite songs on that we'd play in the bus on our way to the netball court. I can honestly say that was the first year where there was no stone unturned. We went through every what if scenario. What if one of the buses break down and only half the team ended up at the courts? Who's taking what position until the whole team reunites? What if there's only one coach? What if we have diarrhea? What if the lights go off? What if we've thought of every single what if scenario going into the 2003 World Cup, because we knew in Jamaica anything can happen. It's not a given that there will be smooth sailing. And it was, our preparation going into it, and also our preparation beforehand. I can remember in Miami where we had a training, and Wilhelmina Davu, she actually had to get out of the venue because she had to go and vomit, but she was not the only one that had to go, because I always say it, that vomits together stays together. That was tough, man. The trainings were tough. Those were the invisible links that we had within one another. And when Tamepara George got sent off, I can remember looking over, and the coaches, Ruth and Lee, didn't have to do or say a thing. Tanya Dalton grabbed the bibs. She got up. Bobby got sent off. We changed the bibs, made Leslie center, and it was just a well-oiled machine. Like everything we did for preparation. And it shows how, again, Lee and Ruth didn't have to do anything because they created that environment where it doesn't matter what happened. Everyone is on the same page. Everyone is on the same wavelength. Everyone knows what their jobs and what their role is in that environment and that specific time. So yes, it is. Yeah, it's pretty special, but it takes time to get there, and it takes everyone to buy into it to get there.
It's something that you've really hit on there. Like in episode 3, the Culture 360 podcast, we interviewed Andy Martin, one of the doctors at Massey University who produced this book. And we got into a conversation about the Silver Ferns and the All Blacks. And he talked about setting expectations and standards. And I think something you struck on there is also not just the expectations and standards that were set within the competition, the tournament while you're away, but also people being leaders and taking responsibility. So it's not just on the coaching staff, it's the pivotal people within the team taking on those responsibilities and being accountable, like you said, so that there was no stone left unturned. And something even as simple as the bibs or somebody not feeling very well, that was all taken into consideration. And people
Yeah.
were taking on that responsibility within the team. They were all leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone knew what was expected. And yeah, and I think everyone had confidence in how we prepared for it and how we supported one another and how we actually trusted one another that everything is going to be okay.
Just to go about the Ketty stuff and the passion for the Ketty theme, and obviously you bringing these items with you. What did you feel that brought to the team and to you personally? Because something we spoke about in other podcasts has been a sense of belonging. And a piece of work we're doing in education in the UK at the moment, secondary schools, is how do you build that connection? And did you feel that it made you stronger as a team and brought a sense of to belonging and community to the group?
I definitely think it has built that sense of belonging. You know, as soon as you start to share things about your journey, as soon as people start to know you, not only for the netballer that can pass and catch and shoot, but actually know your family, start to know your journey. As soon as people start to know one another, the connection goes deeper than just superficial. It is actually something that links you together. And I think by sharing our kitties, um, gave us insight into every person's journey, and you have empathy and you have an understanding of how they react and how they operate. And I think that definitely linked us all together. I definitely think that pretty much made it personal. As soon as you have a personal connection, then you kind of start to stand up for one another. It is definitely, yeah, it is definitely the fact that we started to trust one another more, that we were vulnerable enough to share certain things with one another. Yeah, it is definitely that sense of belonging, like that sisterhood, that invisible thread that we had within the team that was unbreakable.
Something they alluded to in there as well as being a silver fern on and off the court and the acceptable behaviours, not just in terms of performance on the court, but also wearing the tracksuits and the fern and being accountable off the court. But they never really spoke about it that much. It was more handed down from the senior players to the more junior players within the squad. I think Yvonne Willerin mentioned this in something that I read. It was almost like this invisible mentorship, and there was this expectation that you would basically help nurture people through the system. And then once you left the Silver Ferns, you left the dress in a better place. And the All Blacks talk about it as well, about leaving that jersey. You're the custodian, you're not the owner. Is that something that did you mentor people and were you mentored within that system?
Yes, the sport is always bigger than what you are. Like, you are just a pawn, and you are just really lucky to be in this position to represent your country. And I think comes in with recognizing what has come before you, and how people have grown the game before you, and how you take every challenge on board. And you always want to leave a legacy. You always want to leave your sport in a better place than what you got it in. And I think it is, there's immense pride in wearing that dress, and there's immense pride in representing your country. And, when you get to sing the anthem, and, it is just, it is definitely something way bigger than you. And you are there for a short time, but the time that you are there, you really want to leave something that other players or younger players will aspire to. And I think it is really important too that that you recognize the people that's gone before you, and you always want to leave something that is something strong that you want people to grow going forward.
And then just moving on from the Silver Ferns, you retired in 2014. So you obviously left playing and moved into pastures new. How hard was that for you in moving on and moving away from that structure and something that you love doing? And what influenced your decision to obviously stop playing? Was it injury or something else? And how did that make you feel?
Yeah, 2014, wowzers. I knew when hindsight is a really good thing. When I moved away from playing for the Magic and moving to the Pulse, now looking back, I probably should have stayed with Magic. My heart was there. I just felt, gosh, Magic was home. But in my mind, I was like, I live in Wellington, and playing for the Pulse, finishing my career with the Pulse, it's going to be easier. It is, it's just move to another team. But it was actually a culture shock, because it was completely different. How they did things was completely different, and I didn't play my best netball in the last, probably 2013 and 14 wasn't good seasons. Mind you, I was damn old too. I was hitting the 43s at that point in time, so that could have been partly why. Um, I just felt that for me personally, it was quite a culture shock going from Magic to the Pulse, and my game definitely suffered for that. Um, how it came about was, obviously I could feel that I didn't play as good a netball as I could. And playing trials, or we didn't have trials. Actually, the Silver Fern team was selected based on the ANZ games that we played. And Y called me into her office the day before the team was announced. And I knew when I got that call that I don't think this is going to be a good conversation. And honestly, like, Y just had a really beautiful way of, people talk about mana enhancing conversations.
Mm.
That was a hard conversation. Looking back, it must have been a hard conversation for Y. But just the way she kind of made me realize that I wasn't going to be selected for the Ferns, and her giving me the opportunity to retire the way I wanted to retire and not drop me as such. It was, yeah, and I will forever be grateful for that she actually gave me the opportunity to retire rather than drop me. So, and that talks again, that is what sport is all about. That is what culture is all about, because that is, making the best of a really bad situation for one individual. Yeah, it is. It was such a nice way to be able to go, I retire.
I think there's a lesson there in leadership, isn't there? Like you can deliver a message that isn't very nice, but in a nice way and still get a positive out of it.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Every time I have a hard conversation, I think about that, and I'm like, there are ways and ways that you can go about it and delivering a message.
So some of those key lessons you've learned for your playing career, you then have taken on into coaching and administration, and you've been obviously doing the TV piece, commentating on netball games and on Sky. Are there any key lessons that you think you're now implementing within the work that you're doing now at Netball New Zealand and passing on or paying forward that knowledge of leadership and building teams?
I think for me, the biggest thing is people matter. You
Mm.
know, I think from my playing days, preparation is really important. I always used to say proper preparation prevents poor performance. That is the P philosophy, Stu. So I think preparation is really important. Consistency and accountability. is something that's incredibly important too. And I think the importance of trust and then your connections and the fact that you value people. People forget, there's a saying that they say people forget what you say, but people will never forget the way you make them feel. And I think that is really, really important. And I also know that, success isn't linear. You need setbacks and you need difficult conversations and difficult moments, but it is how you respond to those that actually makes a difference.
Just moving on from there. So you're obviously in this role now with Netball New Zealand, and you're loving life there and developing the game, and obviously to stay involved in netball is a real blessing. In terms of organisational culture and what you're doing in the community, you spoke about obviously personal philosophy, and then obviously netball is a predominantly female-led sport, even though the male game is really kicking on now and has done for several years. How do you think gender influences culture in netball compared to more male-dominated sports? I mean, you've mentioned some of the inner sanctums you've been involved with the Magic and the Ferns, and bumping heads with Laura, and then obviously, but you're still mates at the end of the day, and you need to have those hard conversations. Do you see any key differences between male and female sport, whether it be coaching, administration, playing?
Yeah, I think netball is quite unique, especially if we think about the organizational side of things. It is women led, for women, by women, and I think that is quite unique. I think in netball, there's a strong emphasis on relationships, collaboration, and that community connection, the care. Like women are different, like we care and we like to talk and we like inclusivity and those kind of things. Whereas men, I feel are quite hard, like if things don't go well, they make a call and they move on. Whereas women, we like to hang on to things for quite some time. I do think, though, netball is increasingly confident in owning our identity. And, it is a male dominated world out there. But I feel like in netball, we have come a very long way in paving our own way and growing the female leadership in New Zealand. And we obviously always value, we're empathetic and we are extremely competitive and always striving for excellence. I think the opportunity moving forward though is to continue to be bold and innovative. And yeah, I think for us as netball leaders is just staying positive and valuing netball and I think building a strong culture based on values would help us going forward. And it is, it's that this conversation could be a big one, Stu.
Yeah, there could be a 2.0 episode, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
That's coming out of the We're Fixing the World. But something we spoke about in some of the workshops that I've ran around culture is a sliding scale. And if you can imagine, we sit on the scale in terms of the culture that we want somewhere. And at one end, you've got a real hard-nosed, accountable culture, which you have to have in things like high-performance sport, the military, policing, where sometimes if you're 1% off, then people can get hurt. Or at the very least, with high-performance sport, you lose a game and you get scrutinized in the media. At the other end of that scale, you've got what I call like the Google philosophy, where it's full of beanbags and people on slides, and it's quite a fluffy environment. You've obviously been a captain of the Silver Ferns, and I guess what struck me when I read that was what a nice person you are in terms of like you're really bubbly, effervescent, extroverted, as I said at the start. Did you need to change as a person to be the captain of the Silver Ferns, or were you still yourself? And did you feel the pressure of that?
Ooh. There's always pressure, isn't there? Especially in the public and in the media. But I think the pressure is mostly from ourselves, from me as a person. For me, it was about focusing on the things that I could control, like my preparation, my fitness, my mindset, and my role within the team. the team environment that helped enormously, knowing that I could trust people and that I had people with me walking this tough road with me. But again, as I said, we carried one another. And when you I've also learned that vulnerability piece is not a weakness. It is when you actually start to dig a little deeper within one another, and that's where the tough conversations come in, and you acknowledge things that people go through. And I think that was really important in growing out of my performance as an individual over time.
Superb. I'm just going to wrap up now and conclude with some questions. First and foremost, like if you could sit down with your younger self about culture or leadership, knowing what you know now, you mentioned hindsight before being a wonderful thing. Are there any key lessons that you would go back and tell yourself?
I would probably tell myself that it is about people. It is about people that you have with you. It is who you trust, and it is how much you give of yourself. And it is also believing in your own ability,
Okay. Backing yourself.
backing yourself 100%. Yeah.
Is there one thing we mentioned before, the Ketty, and there's been little rituals and traditions along the way, and you'll have been involved in many changing rooms and training sessions. Is there like one ritual tradition that you'll never forget or that stands out to you? We talk about in sport, the presentation of the jersey or the dress, usually before a game, the night before, or when the team's selected. All those little rituals that you've seen over the years. Is there anything that really stands out for you?
Definitely the moment you get into a huddle, like you go through a season, and like you set up everything, like everything you go through your preparation and everything. But as soon as you get into that huddle before you play the game, there's no reason to have a big rack up conversation about, yeah, we're going to go and pump it up and, like pump one another up. I think that huddle before you head out to your position to play the game, that strength that you have within one another. And like I say, you don't need a lot of words. Like sometimes you literally just have to look at one another, look one another in the eye, and feel that it's that feeling that you have that combines you, that just strengthens you as a group, and you just know that you've all worked so hard, and that this is it. This is the moment that everyone worked for, and that regardless of which way it goes, that you were all in this together, and that you've worked incredibly hard, and that is that feeling that you it's hard to describe really, but that you've done everything you could to be in the best position you are at that point in time.
I think with these podcasts, this is something we're trying to bottle really, and like, what is the secret sauce? And I had a conversation with a different professional sports franchise a few weeks ago, and culture was described as like the wind. Like you can feel a good culture around you or at your back pushing you along, but also when it's a shit culture, it's in your face and making things really difficult, like a headwind in a run. If you had to describe culture as a person or a netball person, if culture were a person, how would you describe them in netball?
I would probably say it is a quiet, steady leader. Someone who doesn't need to shout out the commands or the respects, but someone who holds people accountable with care, and someone who inspires through leading by example rather than words. And I think it would be someone that you trust wholeheartedly, and that will have your back when the pressure is on.
Great answer. Two remaining questions, Irene, and these are like stock standard questions that we always ask every guest at the end of every interview, every podcast. So what's the one left field idea or light bulb moment that you've had that we're not talking about in culture and leadership? So have you seen something over your career that you think we really need to implement more of that in the leadership space or the culture space?
I would say it is what happens when no one is watching, the small everyday choices, the way you speak to each other, in the changing room or around the lunch table, how when someone makes a mistake or when you make a mistake, how it's handled. Yeah, I just feel it's that caring, and that is what culture actually is. It's the caring.
You may have answered this final question, but can you finish this sentence? Culture is.
For me, culture is that invisible thread that holds everything together. It's the difference between a team that you play, that just plays, or a team that you actually belongs to, that sense of belonging.
I think when you mentioned before you're in the huddle and you can feel the energy, and when we've been asked to define what culture is or bottle it or give people the secret sauce, as I mentioned before, you can't always describe. It's kind of something that you feel sometimes, isn't it? That energy, that vibe, and you can't always bottle it and put your finger on it. And I think that's something that's really special. Irene, thank you for your time today and your knowledge and your insights. It's been an amazing podcast and interview, and just to listen to you. And you're a legend in every sense of the word. And I'm honored to have worked with you. And thank you for being here today. Thanks, Eyes.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stu. Great questions. I love being part of this.
Thank you, Irene.
Let's do it 2.0.
2.0. There you go. You heard it first. If you enjoyed the Culture 360 podcast, and like me, you geek out on leadership and organizational culture, then please smash a like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Also, if you have any feedback or ideas, or you'd like to get in touch, then please connect with the Culture Room at thecultureroom.co.nz or on our various social media platforms. Thanks for listening.